Morena, talofa lava, and welcome to the Pacific Morning Show with your hosts, Bear, Ryan, and of course, our beautiful Hana. Our show has gone through a bit of a change recently to make sure we are giving you the very best Pasifika news, conversation, and information. Broadcasting every Monday, we aim to start your day with positivity through thought-provoking conversations and information that will set your week off right. So first up, we're going to dive into our talk of the day, which is topic of conversation, TOC. I like that?
TOC. Talk of the day.
Talk of the day. But guys, how have you been?
It's good to be back. It's been a while, so I'm feeling very good.
Yeah. Very excited for what we have in store for our viewers.
Yep.
We've done a lot of planning. We've done a lot of work. All three of us have been working tirelessly on this. So we're hoping to present, what we have in store for you guys.
Today, this morning, I do have my headline, which wouldn't call it a headline, but more information to help our Pasifika community. But it's a kāinga ora homes and communities initiative, which is designing Pasifika-styled homes that suits us. We all know that our Pasifika families need slight changes to, because it's different, eh? Our families require bigger rooms, and it needs to be designed to fit our bigger families, which is a lot different to your standard home in New Zealand. So it is important that the Talanoa has started earlier on this the year, and there's been a number of Talanoas where they are learning about things to make changes in our homes. And this is an architect by the name of Lama Tone. So they are going to continue to finalise the designs, but please, if you want to contribute to the Talanoa, the feedback online, head over to mangeredevelopment.co.nz/modernising Pasifika homes. I really think it's important because only we know what we need in our homes and what is important to run our everyday family lives. But I'm looking forward to this actually.
My talk of the day is a news piece that came out in E Tangata, which is the online news platform for Tangata Pasifika.
Yep.
So this article was talking about the name of the Cook Islands. So this person, Liam Kokaua, he spoke to one of the reporters, Te Wila Fuatai, about his intention, or that he wants the Cook Islanders to start thinking about changing their name. And it's really interesting that this conversation has happened over and over. Just for some background information, the Cook Islands was named by a Russian cartographer in the honor of the Captain James Cook. And funnily enough, the man himself only stepped on one of the smaller islands twice. He hasn't even reached...
the true colonizer.
Yeah, exactly. And so... another funny fact about this is, and this comes straight from the article, is that Niue was once considered a part of the
one
Cook
of those
Islands.
islands.
The biggest one.
Yeah.
No, but it's really interesting that the conversation around the name change for the Cook Islands, it stems back to 1994. The then Prime Minister wanted to set a referendum to change the name, but surprisingly, only 30% of people supported it. And it's you'd think that Pacific Islanders especially would waste no time in shedding their colonial name. But the Cook Islanders, they really attached to it.
Right.
A lot of them have cited that this is the name that they grew up with. So why bother changing it? More recently, in about 2020, they had another... The conversation sparked up again to change the name. And again, the diaspora living away from the island gave them a bit of backlash. Said that this is the name that we have grown up with.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
Why would we change the name? And in the kind of attitude where a lot of countries are looking at changing their names, New Zealand, the use of Aotearoa is becoming a lot more common.
Yeah.
And that's trying to get rid of the colonial past.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of African countries that have shared their colonial names. Tuvalu, I think I will have to reconfirm
Yep.
that. They recently changed their name away from their colonial name. So the Cook Islands, why don't the people want to change it?
Yeah,
Like,
that's super
what's-
interesting.
And like, I want to extend this question out to any of our viewers who are of Cook Island descent, or do you support the name change? Do you think that the name
Yeah.
should change? One of the suggestions was from the referendum would be that the name would be changed to Avaiki Nui. And I don't know about you, but that sounds really cool.
I
Yeah.
think that's a
Avaiki meaning homeland and Nui meaning like vast. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
vast homeland, which really characterizes the Cook Islands as a nation.
Yeah.
So if you do support the name change, let us know. Comment below, and we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting.
It is,
eh?
eh?
Honestly, if I had the chance to change like a colonial name to a Pacific name or something that relates more to the people, I would definitely do it. But that's just me.
Yeah.
That's just
I know,
me.
but I also get the sense of why people wouldn't want to change it because they've grew up on it. And
Yeah,
I think that's
there's an
also-
attachment to it,
It's
eh?
an attachment, and then you think, oh, but we grew up on it. Because I get like that sometimes. But we grew up. This is home. This is where we created our memories. But again, it could also add value to the next generation as well.
Yeah,
Changing the name as well. But yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, so my talk of the day today is Tuli takes flight. So just to give this a bit of context, between the years of 1974 and 1976 in New Zealand, there was a series of rigorous immigration policies, very racist policies that were carried out and approved by the New Zealand government that resulted in targeted raids on the home of Pasifika families. So these raids had an objective. It was to find, convict, and deport overstayers. So these raids often took place very early in the morning or very late at night. So police officers would bust through, Pasifika people's homes. They were literally like sleeping. Their kids were sleeping with guns, and there'll be flashlights in people's faces. And they would traumatize a lot of Pasifika families. So this happened in the 70s. Fast forward to today in 2021. The New Zealand government officially acknowledged that the raids were racist and wrong after nearly 5 decades, which is a long time. So with acknowledging that the Dawn raids were racist, there was an entire iwhonga. Bluwave was there.
Yes.
Jacinda was under the mat. There was an entire ceremony. Songs were shared. And also, Pasifika communities were awarded with the Tuli Takes Flight scholarships, which you may be eligible for if you are of Pasifika descent. So, if you're a mother who's been working and who wants to go back to study, or if you're just a student who wants to return, there is a great opportunity for you to apply for a scholarship. There's 30 to be awarded, valued at 10 to 30,000 for study commencing in 2023. So applications for that has opened on Monday the 17th of October, and they close on the 15th of November. So remember to check them out. It is the Tuli Takes Flight on the Ministry of Education website. So make sure to get your application in if you are interested in studying and pursuing your career. Applications close on Tuesday the 15th of November at 5 p.m.
No, that's awesome. And it's good to see the government, put something in place because, I know it was a long time ago, but it's good to see some kind of movement just in regards to that. But guys, I do have a quote this morning. The quote is from a person called Wendell Phillips. He was an advocate for abolishing slavery. He did have a promising political career, but gave that all up because at the time he was an abolitionist. But the quote goes, "The greatest praise government can win is that its citizens know their rights and maintain them."
And it's a really interesting quote.
Yeah.
Especially considering the time in which he lived, a time where slavery was rife in the Americas, that a lot of people needed to know their rights in order to be able to survive, in order to be able to not get arrested, not get pushed out.
Yes.
Like, they needed to know their rights, and it definitely is the responsibility of the government to make sure that their people know what their rights are, to hold them accountable. That's the system of public office. And that goes to today's political atmosphere. a lot of people don't know their rights. A lot of people don't even vote. A lot of people don't care about politics. They don't care about the effect that politics has on them and the influence that they could have on politics. They just don't know. So does that mean that our government and our local governments are failing? Like, are they not doing their job correctly to make sure that our civics education is where it should be and that our people are politically competent to be able to know their rights?
That's a really good point. You bring it, Ryan, because looking at the Pasifika voter turnout and the last local board and local government elections, it was very poor. From our Pasifika people, I think we had that was one of the lowest voter turnouts. It was 1 in 5 people that voted. So 1 in every 5 people are making the decision for the rest of Auckland, which is very concerning. And that quote is really fitting because he says the greatest praise government can win is that citizens know their rights and maintain them. I don't think I could confidently say that for Pasifika communities in New Zealand specifically, that's something we can say confidently and agree with. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Which also means that there's a lot of opportunity that is presented for us to learn about, our local government elections, even our central government elections, and what that means for us, how we can contribute, and valuing our place in society and things like that. So definitely in New Zealand, we have a lot of work to do, especially our Pacific communities. We need to be more active and, and know that our votes matter.
Because I agree. I mean, it does. I mean, just hearing that, Hannah. I was actually quite disappointed. But more so now that when you see the numbers, 1 in 5, that's quite disgusting. I'm really, really disgusted that our Pasifika community are quite vocal. And we are the first to complain and highlight issues on Facebook. We're the first ones to pass judgment. Put comments, on a feed. But yet we can't actually translate that in votes. And, the reason why I'm saying how disgusted I am, I mean, we are forever standing in queues at places like Costco. And I'm talking about hundreds waiting there for hours just to be served or just to check out a new place. And this goes to, as well, Krispy Kreme. The new Krispy Kreme outlet was placed, a very unhealthy outlet. And I'm not saying, in moderation, but was placed in South Auckland. And there were queues. There were days where our people, our Pasifika community, would be in these queues for hours, patient to wait for a product. And, I mean, can we not then translate that same energy, that same passion into just kind of getting ourselves out there to vote? Because our votes compared to standing in a line, that is going to impact and add so much more value to our community, to our families, than it will be to stand in a line like at Costco's.
Right.
And
it just brings to mind during COVID, remember when COVID finished? And all our families just lined outside KFC for hours just to get their KFC fix. And, I totally get where you're coming from on that. But the question remains, why are Pasifika people not voting? Like you mentioned, we can make our way out to these events and to these big openings of consumerism, but is it because we don't care? Do we care?
I know. Why? Do we care?
Yeah, do we care? So is voting even important for us? So
but the thing is the reason why I know that it's important to our Pasifika people, I mean, definitely I believe there's a lack of understanding. There is. But at the same time, in saying that, there's a lack of understanding. When you don't understand something that we want to learn more about, what do? We seek help, or we research, or we do something. So when it's something that we want to do, we go out there and seek and look for help, or we ruffle feathers when we need something done, right? It's the same thing with voting. It's so important. But in saying that, do we care? And I think generally our Pasifika people care, and I'm talking mainly just around the recent election that's happened in Samoa, which globally, it went global with how our Samoan community rallied behind each other because they knew how it would affect them directly.
Yeah.
So I know that our people are genuinely, they're well educated just in regards to, how our votes could make direct impact. So why is it maybe that there's just a lack of understanding here in New Zealand? But I really, really think there's definitely, they do care. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that there's just no sense of connection.
And I just off the back of that, yeah, there's no understanding. They don't know.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know what goes on in the top rank,
Yeah.
the top ranks. And I'll go into it straight after this break.
Bluwave Ngalu Moana. We are focused on providing digital solutions for our Pacific people. With a creative team that incorporates Pasifika values and cultures, there are no limitations. We offer a variety of digital media solutions that cater to Pacific peoples. With over 10 years' experience in graphic design and photography, we take pride in creating art with a Pacific focus. We also specialize in filming, editing, and live streaming. A digital media company serving our Pasifika families, Pasifika businesses, and Pasifika communities. Bluwave Ngalu Moana. Live and breathe Pacific.
The understanding is really important, and I want to take a little bit of time to go into our Auckland Council.
Yep.
This might not be true for all local councils, but definitely for the Auckland Council, which has the highest Pasifika population. It's important that we know how it works, and so I'll go into it. So the Auckland Council works by, we have a governing body, which has our mayor, which is currently Wayne Brown, our deputy mayor, Desley Simpson, our councillors, the three Pasifika councillors. You've got Al Filipaina and Lotufuli, that are Manukau ward councillors, and you've got Josephine Bartley, who's the councillor for Maungakeke. So these are the people that, they're the ones that set the rates. So for homeowners, that's interesting for you, because they're the ones who decide how much you pay, and how much you have to give. They also govern the CCOs. The CCOs are the council-controlled organizations. This is water care. That's our stormwater, our drinking water, our drain water. We also have Auckland Transport, public transport. The rates that people pay for charges on parking. That all comes down to the council-controlled organizations, and these are the people that are the ones that control them. So they make decisions on how these CCOs operate, which not a lot of people know, that the councillors that we vote in are the ones setting the plans for these organizations. And locally, we have the local boards, which you might have seen a lot of recently, with the recent elections that have come out, with the politicians coming out every 3 years.
Right.
They're the ones that are meant to advocate for the local community. So you've got, I can't remember exactly how much local boards there are, but essentially in every little community there's a local board that is set to represent you and your values. Recently, we had a few Manurewa local board candidates come through to our show, and they were complaining that Manurewa didn't have enough representation for them, and that means that the people that are like the Pasifika people that aren't being represented on the board, their values aren't being shared to the plan for that community. whenever the governing body make decisions that concern the local communities, the local boards are the ones that are meant to advocate for them.
Yeah.
So if you're not voting, if you're not deciding who is on these boards, then you essentially are locked out of that conversation. Anything that the governing body decides to do, if they decide to set your rates higher, then
Right.
and you haven't voted in the people you want on your local board, then you don't have a voice. You don't have an advocate for you or your values. You have people that would represent others in your community that might be able to tackle higher rates, but you can't.
Yeah.
But you didn't vote.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's and like the local board representatives are also important because these are the people that manage and make local decisions about the parks, community programs, local events, your fees and charges. They oversee your public facilities. So if you are huge users of your public pool, of your public library, of your public parks, these are the people that are the managers of that. So if those things aren't up to standard, these are the people you hold to account.
Yeah.
And if you think that the library is really important, that the library should have a lot of investment to it, but you're not voting and other people are voting to put people on to improve the parks instead, then the library remains as it is.
Yeah.
You don't see any improvement because you're not putting your vote in there to influence how the local board make their decisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. And, you know, growing up, I was born and raised in Mangele, and the library was kind of like where we used to walk. My mum would tell us, wait there. When I finish work, I'll come pick you guys up. So me and my siblings, let's go to the library.
Yeah.
So it was a place that we used often. Like every after school would be there. So I can definitely see where you're coming from on the importance of these things, because for working mums who, you know, they use public facilities a lot in the holidays, mum, we want to do something. And, you know, people in low socioeconomic communities don't have that much budget.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, everyone, pack your bags. We're going to the pools and we're just going to have like a picnic there or something like that. So these things are actually really important, especially to at-risk communities. So another thing I also noted with what you said was how council makes their money, which is quite interesting to me in regards to Pasifika community. So they make a lot of their money through general rates. That's not only homeowners, that's business owners as well, so commercial properties. But more than half of their operating revenue comes from water charges, public transport fares, consenting fees, central government subsidies, and also from contributions from developers. So the Pasifika home ownership rate is very low. Like, I think we're sitting between, I probably need to fact check this, but quote me, it's somewhere between 18% and 21%.
Yep.
And we're one of the lowest, one of the communities with the lowest, like, we don't own many homes. And, you know, those conversations about rates, home loans don't really start unless you have a home. And which may be part of the reason why Pasifika communities don't really vote, because, you know, rates is not really something that's discussed at the dinner table, and neither is politics. Like, politics is not something, and
off the back of that, if our home ownership is so low, then that must mean a lot of our Pasifika families are renting. And like, from what I know from personal experience, a lot of renters don't stay in the same home for a long time. Rental contracts aren't that long in a lot of places. So that then sets that they don't have that sense of belonging to the communities that they live in.
absolutely.
If they're not owning homes in those communities, if they're having to move around, why should they care who's on the local board or who is representing that community?
Just busy trying to survive, really.
Exactly.
And renting is very risky. Like, if the homeowner just decides, I want to sell,
That's it.
you're out, and you have to be like, holy crap, I have to find a new house in 4 weeks. Move all of this in 4 weeks.
Shucks. Just thinking about that.
So, and like, as the only homeowner on this table, I wanted to ask you, like, does your family do they have these conversations about the rates? Do they know where the rates go with their local government?
I've brought an interesting conversation just in regards to that, because, to be honest, it never ever came to mind, or we've never discussed it. And sadly, I think it's because we've just never, we were never really well educated just in regards to the rates and how our rates could potentially affect how, our community. And, when we purchased our home, I was quite young. My sister and I you're looking at 19 and 20. And now I'm in my 30s and I'm just kind of like looking at it going, shucks, imagine had I known, I would make sure that we would have regular conversations just so that we can educate ourselves, but also our families, just so that we can get a proper, reflection on, where we're at the stage. Because now that I'm looking at it, and I've just been sitting here just listening to the rates and how it does affect our community, now I'm just sitting here quite annoyed that I didn't get myself well educated about it, because now I could potentially, I am paying the same rate as investors in our community who own 50-something homes and who have the money and who have, the funds to pay that high rate or that rate. And why should I then pay the same amount? Because I'm, but yeah, I'm quite annoyed at myself that we haven't, been well educated just in regards to whether my rate and how we fit into the plan.
Yeah.
Because we don't, by the sounds of it, 17 or 18 to 21% is quite low. We don't fit in their plan, but the developers do. And that's why from every time that there's a meeting, these developers are in there scooping up either the best rates or high rates so that, whatever it is, so it suits them, which is a bit, puts ultimately their business, extra money for them. So, shucks, what an eye-opener, right? I think for me, and just going off what you're saying, just a sense of connection back to our community, you're absolutely right. When we've only just moved once, since I've known, my mum and dad, my parents, they've moved probably three times, and the third time here in Manurewa, which is now our home. We do have a sense of connection back to community, to our Manurewa community. We are familiar with our surroundings. However, there's a lot of work. We need to be well educated. We need to connect more with the local board, but I think it's, we've experienced it with the FAST as government as well. Our Samoan community do feel a sense of connection back home because that's their land. And if they don't have a say with the government, the current government in Samoa, they could potentially then make that decision on behalf of anyone who reside outside of Samoa. And I think we need to apply that same formula to our voting system here in New Zealand. And I think even though it doesn't directly affect you now because you're not a homeowner, I still think it's important to vote. Yeah. Just that sense of connection, right?
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I think, behind all of this conversation about home ownership, there needs to be a strong foundation of supporting strong, resilient Pasifika communities to get into homes. Bro, the dream, the New Zealand dream, right? Buy your first home.
Yeah.
It's like $1 million home. What it looks like here does not look like $1 million home of what it looks like in Texas, America. In America, you're looking at a mansion. And here you're looking at a nice 2 to 3 bedroom house.
In Ponsonby.
With a small front yard and
With
a small backyard.
Exactly. And you may be lucky if you get a parking space.
Yeah.
So it's very hard in the New Zealand market to own your own home. And so that's why we have amazing initiatives such as Kāinga Ora, which we covered in our headlines this morning to help Pasifika people and also people who haven't had their first home yet get into their first homes. Which is super important. But I think there needs to be more support on building resilient Pasifika communities, and also your vote does count. Like you,
100.
like it literally counts. Like you can have a say in how the in the rates, and also what happens to your parks, your pools. How much you're paying for public transport, even your speeding ticket. I know I've got a few speeding tickets and they're pretty expensive, to be honest. Like you can't just fork out 200 like randomly, but I think it's really important that Pasifika communities understand that their vote definitely does count.
100.
And like off the back of that, you are voting to set the direction that you want our communities to go towards. Because our local government set like long-term plans
Yep.
as well. There's an Auckland plan, there's a unitary plan. If you want to read them, they're on the Auckland Council website.
Yep.
But essentially, these plans are like 10, 20, 30 years,
Yes.
Yeah.
30-year plans. If you haven't been part of the conversation at the
Yes.
start, you're going to get to year 20 and be like, wait,
What
Wait,
happened?
what?
Yeah.
What happened? Why wasn't I consulted about this?
Exactly.
But that's why we as a community need to start researching, being a bit
Yes.
more aware, being a bit more involved
Yeah.
in the way our local communities are managed.
Hard up.
And
Be
also
part of
like-
the plan.
Yeah.
Be part of the plan. Yeah.
And like on a micro level, we need to start normalizing conversations like about finances.
Yes.
yes.
Like it's okay to talk about money. Like it's okay if you're with Bakel. Like it's okay. Like seriously, and
We
take the
do.
shame
Yep.
away from talking about your finances, because these are the conversations that will lead you to owning a home and having that sense of community and belonging in a society. So these are there's a lot of things we need
Yeah.
to work on.
Yeah.
And if anything, I don't see this as a problem. I see it as an opportunity.
Yes.
For our community players to come in
Yep.
and solve, which is awesome.
Love it. Guys, be part of the plan, guys. Be part of it. It's important.
And it also reminds me of an episode that we had a few weeks back with Licky. Shout out to Licky. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And he shared with us a very valuable quote. And it was, if you're not at the table, you're what's on the menu. You don't want to be on the menu, guys. So make sure your vote is literally an entryway onto that table. And make sure that you're making decisions for your family and for your community.
Bluwave Ngalumoana. We are focused on providing digital solutions for our Pacific people. With a creative team that incorporates Pasifika values and cultures, there are no limitations. We offer a variety of digital media solutions that cater to Pacific peoples. With over 10 years' experience in graphic design and photography, we take pride in creating art with a Pacific focus. We also specialize in filming, editing, and live streaming. A digital media company serving our Pasifika families, Pasifika businesses, and Pasifika communities. Bluwave Ngalumoana. Live and breathe Pacific.
Introducing Fale Andrew Lesa, who won in the recent Manurewa local board election and is the first Pacific person to actually sit on the board, is on our show today to discuss many of the issues that lie within our Pasifika community and voting. How are you this morning, Andrew?
Very well, thanks. Loving my new shirt.
We're honestly so honored to have you on, and we have quite a few questions here for you because we're quite interested, especially with the recent elections that went and with the turnout in Pasifika, voting. It turned out there was a really low turnout, and we're very curious as to why those numbers are there. So we just wanted to ask you, could you describe your role as a local board member and your responsibilities as you're aware? So what's it like in the day of you? What's it like? What does a typical day look like for you?
I am actually sworn in tonight, so I still don't know quite what it looks like yet. But basically, my job is to put the local and local government and to make sure that Manurewa is heard, not only in Manurewa, but across the region. It's a super city now, so Manurewa's interests can be left behind if we're not a strong and united local board. So our job is to make sure that we're organized and that we're strategic, that we're influential where it matters most, which is in downtown Auckland, where those decisions about budget allocation and priorities are being decided without us. And so the louder we are and the more powerful we are, I guess, the more they'll notice us and the more they'll listen.
Far out, man. It's already powerful this morning. And first of all, I just want to say congratulations. And I'm super excited because I get to have a closer look into Manurewa as well because I reside in Manurewa. But please, you know, as someone that who's gone through the entire process of local elections and has come out successful, you can see a lot of our Pasifika people share a common thought that their individual votes don't matter. What are your thoughts on that?
It's probably true because I'm the only Pacific person on the local board, even though 36% of Manurewa is Pasifika. So there is a perception that, you know, our people are not there. They do not see themselves on the local board yet. And so they don't see their vote as being powerful or important or meaningful. And so my job is to make sure that those perceptions change over the next 3 years and to, you know, make sure that more Pacific candidates run and that more Pacific candidates win. You know, it's so important that we have Pacific outcomes on that table, and that those outcomes are being measured and tracked for success.
What areas do you think we could improve on to kind of let our Pacifica people know that their voices can be heard and that they can make a difference?
It's interesting you say that because during the campaign, you know, the election was everywhere. It was on social media, it was on Pacific radio, it was on the television, it was everywhere. Our signs were everywhere. You can't say you didn't know that there was an election happening. Everyone knew that there was an election going on. They decided not to vote. And the reason is why? Is it because they don't care? Is it because they think their vote doesn't matter? Is it because, you know, they think politics is dirty and tainted and ungodly? There are so many reasons as to why people don't vote. And we're still wrestling with that right now. Yeah.
And just to elaborate on that question, have you thought of any ways to collect data as to why people are not caring to vote moving forward? Because that would be really important, right?
Yeah. So they did a local government review recently to decide how to go forward because, you know, the current system is clearly not working anymore. Most people don't check their mail. All their mail comes via email now. So how often do we even check the mailbox? A lot of people just don't have that in the back of their minds anymore. So filling it in and then taking it where, because postal boxes have disappeared outside your dairies. So it's getting harder to post them back now. So, you know, that model is outdated and irrelevant now. And so we do need to move with the times and look at things like online voting, whether you can text your vote back, whether you can do some kind of, innovative things.
I agree. And also, have you discussed it with the other local board members who won as well? What's the general attitude around low Pasifika votes?
Yeah, the consensus is the same across the whole of South Auckland. And I think it's very similar for our Pasifika people in West Auckland as well, that people just either don't care or don't see it as important to them, or it's quite sad. But, generally, though, there's quite a lot of Pacific representation in places like Mangere, Otahuhu, Henderson, Avondale. So we are represented quite strongly in other areas. It's only Manurewa that's really lagging behind, and so we really need to pick it up and do better.
Interesting.
You mentioned that, I agree with you that everyone knew that there was an election going on because the signs are everywhere.
Yeah.
But do you think there would be a strategy going forward to improve that? Because I know driving through, you can see the signs. You know there's an election. But it's like, I don't really know what these people are doing. I don't know what these people stand for. Like, is there a strategy going forward, especially for more people that are going to stand up to stand for the local board? In terms of like media engagement?
Absolutely. I remember when the voting papers came out and we got like a booklet for the bios of all the candidates, and it was like as thick as a phone book. And I was like, nobody's going to read that. It's too long, it's too boring, most people don't care. And so what we need to do with this strategy is convince people to vote because it matters to them. Rent, for example, is decided by how much council spends. So the more council spends, the higher your rent. So there are so many everyday examples of why it is so important to vote, because we have so many decisions that we make every day. I was also elected to the Woody Licensing Trust, which is the proceeds from the gambling machines come to us, and we decide where that money goes. There's so many Pacific churches out there that are looking for funding, and that is just one of the opportunities where they can get funding from us. So people don't know why their vote is important, and it's our job with that strategy to convince them that this is why your vote is so powerful.
Yeah, like personally, because I don't even think my vote counted.
Yeah.
Like I voted, but it was just two random names that I would never hear of other than around the elections. So I'm glad that there's an attempt at least to try and make people care.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because a lot of politicians show up every 3 years when the election is around, and then they disappear.
Yes.
And so I don't want to be just another career politician. I want to be active. I want to be seen. I want to be accessible. People need to see me every day, not just every 3 years. And I think that's where the challenge lies. A lot of politicians have disappointed our people. And so there is a perception that all politicians are the same. And so it's our job as the new politicians coming through to change those mindsets and those attitudes.
Honestly, you're so great to talk to, and I definitely agree on you. Everyone knew there was a local ball happening; they were just unaware of the details.
Yes.
But what you mentioned before, like, did you know that Auckland Council spending is the reason why your rent goes up or down? Like, if we frame it that way, people would be like, "Oh, here we go. This is something I can relate to," because Pasifika is one of the lowest. They own the lowest amount of homes in
17%.
Auckland and New Zealand. So
sad.
that's something that they could relate to, and
Of
those are the
course.
kind of like information that needs to be relayed back to them. So like, do you think there needs to be like more media engagement?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, especially digital content. I look at people like Lorenzo, for example, at PMN.
Yes.
He's amazing. I
He's
love
awesome.
his content.
Yeah.
And there are so many TikTok celebrities that we can use to influence voter turnout and why it's so important to vote. So, tapping into the people that have a large audience is critical. Not just traditional media, but moving into that digital media space.
Absolutely.
Do you think, and this is about the electoral process, do you think there needs to be changes to further increase the amount of people that are coming to vote?
It's hard to say right now because we're doing a lot already and there's only so much more that we can do. But I take the point about civics education in schools. Like when I was in school, we didn't learn about elections or why they were important or, that we have responsibilities as citizens. And one of those responsibilities is to vote in free and fair elections. We have to be mindful that, democracy is not universal. There are so many countries, even in the Pacific, that don't have democracy. I remember reading an article in Fiji recently where an opposition party member was charged for kissing someone on the cheek, and it was seen as interfering with the election that they're having in December. So there's so many issues out in the Pacific where democracy is under attack, and it's not as universal as it is here. And so we can't take it for granted. We need to appreciate what we have in our elections and celebrate that.
Absolutely.
And on that, with the civics education, do you support lowering the voting age?
That's a tricky one, because so many young people already aren't voting. So why would you make that net even wider? I think we need to focus on getting the 18 to 24-year-olds voting first before we focus on asking the 16-year-olds to vote. I started working when I was 15, so I was paying taxes at 15, so I can see why 16-year-olds want to vote so they can influence how their tax dollars are being spent. But at the same time, a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds are not voting, the vast majority, in fact. So do we want to make that problem worse, or do we want to solve that problem first and then consider giving 16-year-olds the right to vote?
Because I know one of the supports for that argument is when they're still in high school, then they have access to direct education about
Of course.
civics. Do you think that could...
Absolutely. There's some research out there that says if you vote for the first time, you're more likely to continue voting for the rest of your life. So if you get them at 16 voting, they're more likely to remember to vote when they turn 18.
Yeah.
So that's a very powerful argument. But then do you want the schools influencing how they vote?
Yeah.
That's the question.
That's a very
how
tricky
far
question.
down the line do you want to go? Because a lot of the teachers will influence the way that they vote and who they vote for. And so, the parents will lose control of that process if you hand it to the schools.
No, you're right,
No, that's the questions we had for you. You answered them so well. I've learned so much this, but thank you so much, Fale, for coming onto our show. We really appreciate your support. Definitely not the last time. We want you in here all the time, updating us on Manurua and all the great things happening there. But just any last words for our viewers before we close this one off?
Just thank you for voting for me. Thank you for having the faith in someone so young. I grew up in Manurua, so it's my home, and I want to protect it and make sure it thrives. So, whawhitai lava, mā lole, ka puai.